You made a mistake today, not a loud one, not the kind that echoes, not the kind that other people point at across a crowded room while they cover their mouths and whisper. No, you made the quiet kind, the invisible kind, the kind that bleeds you slowly and silently, over weeks, over months, over years, until one morning you wake up and you wonder why the people around you no longer seem impressed, why your words no longer carry weight, why you announce a plan and people nod politely and then go back to their conversations. Why you feel like you are speaking into a room that has already decided it is done listening to you, and you will sit there, puzzled, maybe even wounded, and you will run through every possible reason. Maybe it was your tone, maybe it was your timing, maybe you were too aggressive, or not aggressive enough, but you will not arrive at the real answer, because the real answer is sitting right there, plain and exposed. Like everything else about you, you told them too much. You laid your entire self out on the table. Your plans, your fears, your goals, your weekend, your struggles, your triumphs, your insecurities, all of it spoken freely, given without hesitation, handed over like a gift you thought would earn their trust, their respect, their admiration. And all it did was make you transparent. And transparent people in this world are forgettable people. Think about the most powerful figure you have ever known, the person in any room who seemed to carry a gravity that others orbited around. Think about what made them magnetic. Think about what made you lean forward when they spoke. Think about the silence that seemed to surround them, even in the middle of noise. Was it how much they shared? Was it the long explanations, the detailed reports of their weekend, the unsolicited breakdowns of their strategy, the emotional outpourings that asked for understanding? No, it was the silence. It was the pause before they spoke. It was the half answer that made you want to ask again. It was the smile that gave nothing away. It was the sense that somewhere behind their eyes, there was a world you had not been invited into. And because you hadn't been invited, you couldn't stop thinking about it. That is power. Not the power of noise, not the power of explanation, not the power of honesty that bleeds into oversharing. The power of deliberate, calculated, unbreakable silence. And tonight, right now in this moment, you're going to learn exactly how to wield it. This is not a lecture on deception. This is not a guide to manipulation in the cheapest, most cowardly sense of the word. This is something deeper, something older, something that every emperor, every statesman, every truly powerful man and woman who has ever lived has understood at the marrow level of their being. This is the doctrine of calculated opacity, the art of revealing only what must be revealed, the science of keeping the rest in the shadows, the philosophy of understanding that your information, your real information, your plans, your ambitions, your vulnerabilities, is not meant to be shared. It is meant to be guarded, preserved, deployed only when the moment demands it and the price is right. Because here is the truth that nobody told you when you were taught to be open and honest and authentic and transparent. When people only know half the story, they fill in the blanks with their imagination. And that imagination is what controls them. So tonight, you stop giving the full story. Tonight, you learn to live in the half. There is a conditioning inside of you that has been building since childhood, since the first time a teacher asked you to share with the class, since the first time a parent praised you for being honest, since the first time a friend said, "You can tell me anything," and you believed them enough to do exactly that. You were trained slowly and thoroughly to believe that sharing is a virtue, that openness is trustworthiness, that transparency is strength, that people who keep things to themselves are hiding something shameful. That mystery is suspicious, that the highest form of connection is the kind where you lay yourself completely bare and let another person see all of it. All your mess, all your hope, all your fear, all your strategy, all your next step. You were trained to confuse honesty with oversharing, and the world watched you do it, and the world said nothing, because the world benefits from you being an open book. When you are readable, you are predictable, and when you are predictable, you are manageable. You are easy to navigate around, easy to account for, easy to work against. Think about it. You have done it more times than you can count. Someone in your workplace asks, "So what are you working on?" And instead of a brief, confident answer, you give them the entire architecture, the timeline, the roadmap, the contingency plan, the backup contingency plan, the fear that it might not work, the hope that it will, the small, insecure voice in the back of your mind that wonders if you are even the right person for it. You hand it all over. Why? Because you wanted connection, because you wanted them to understand you, because some part of you believed that if they knew everything, everything you were doing, everything you were thinking, everything you were feeling, they would respect you more, trust you more, like you more. But what actually happened? They nodded, they listened, they smiled at the appropriate moments, and then they walked away, carrying your entire blueprint in their pocket, and you didn't even notice the door closing behind them. This is the first and most devastating cost of oversharing. You give away the element of surprise, and in every arena, in business, in relationships, in social dynamics, in competition, the element of surprise is not just useful, it is everything. The moment your enemy knows your move before you make it, your move is already neutralized. The moment your competitor understands your strategy, they have begun to build a counter-strategy. The moment the people around you can predict your reactions, your fears and your desires, they have gained a leverage over you that you handed to them completely voluntarily. And here is the cruelest part. They didn't even have to ask for it. You gave it to them freely. You gave it to them because you were taught that sharing builds trust. And in a perfect world, in the soft, warm, idealized version of human nature that you were raised to believe in, that would be true. But this is not that world. This world operates on incentive, on competition, on the invisible arithmetic of who knows more than whom. And in this arithmetic, the one who shares the most is not the most trusted. They are the most exposed. Exposure in this world is not a strength. Exposure is a wound. And you have been walking around for years with your wounds on the outside, wondering why people keep pressing their fingers into them. Now, here is where you stop. Here is where the old version of you ends and something harder, something smarter, something infinitely more powerful begins. It begins with understanding the mechanism behind your urge to share. Because the urge is real, it is biological, it is wired into your nervous system at a fundamental level. Humans are social creatures. Sharing information is the foundational act of tribe building. When you tell someone something true about yourself, your brain releases a small cascade of dopamine, the same chemical associated with reward and pleasure. You feel good when you share, you feel validated, you feel seen, and that feeling of being seen is one of the most intoxicating feelings the human psyche is capable of producing. But here is the thing about addiction. The drug feels good in the moment. The drug always feels good in the moment. It is only afterward, only in the cold, clear light of the morning after, that you realize what the drug actually cost you. Your oversharing is an addiction, and like every addiction, it is costing you far more than it is giving you. It is costing you your mystery, your unpredictability, your leverage, your psychological power, your edge, your ability to walk into a room and be the most interesting person in it. Not because of what you say, but because of what you refuse to say. The most powerful people in history understood something profound and counterintuitive. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence. Dense, impenetrable, magnetic presence. A silence that makes other people fill the air with their own words, their own assumptions, their own projection, and in doing so, reveal themselves completely to you while you remain perfectly, deliberately, strategically unseen. That is the first principle of calculated opacity. Know the cost of every word before you spend it. So what exactly is calculated opacity? Let's be precise about this because precision matters. And precision, knowing exactly what something is and what it is not, is itself a form of power. Calculated opacity is not lying. Say that again, clearly and without ambiguity. It is not lying. It is not manipulation in the petty sense of the word. It is not being cold for the sake of being cold. It is not being rude. It is not stonewalling someone who genuinely deserves your honesty. It is not the behavior of a coward who hides behind silence because they are afraid of confrontation. Those things are weakness dressed up as mystery. Calculated opacity is something entirely different. Calculated opacity is the art, and make no mistake, it is an art. It requires skill and deliberate practice and a level of self-awareness that most people will never develop. It is the art of strategic communication. It is the discipline of understanding that every conversation is an exchange. And in every exchange, what you give and what you withhold are both forms of currency. You are always spending something when you speak. You are always investing something when you stay silent. And the wise communicator, the psychologically powerful communicator, understands the difference between the two and chooses with ruthless intentionality. Calculated opacity means this: you reveal only what is absolutely necessary and you guard the rest in the shadows, not because the rest is shameful, not because you are hiding failure or running from accountability, but because the rest is yours. The rest is sovereign territory, the interior landscape of your ambitions, your plans, your methods, your emotional architecture. And sovereign territory is not handed over to strangers, to casual acquaintances, to colleagues whose allegiances are uncertain, or to competitors whose interests run directly counter to yours. Sovereign territory is protected. Think of it in terms of a castle. In the medieval architecture of power, a castle was not designed to be transparent. You did not build a castle out of glass. You built it out of stone, thick stone, deep stone, walls that were impossible to see through, impossible to breach without sustained and catastrophic effort. You built a moat. You built a drawbridge that you controlled. You decided who entered and who did not. And the people on the outside outside, they saw the walls, they saw the height of the towers, they imagined the power inside. And that imagination, that vision of what might lie within those walls, was often more terrifying, more awe-inspiring, more impressive than the actual contents of the castle. Your mind is your castle, your plans are your walls, your ambitions are your towers, and you have been living all this time as if the castle had no walls at all, as if anyone who wandered past could simply walk in, look around, catalogue everything, leave, and come back whenever they decided it was useful. You need to build the walls, not to close yourself off from life, not to become isolated or paranoid or emotionally withered, but to introduce, for the first time in your life, a genuine architecture of strategic communication. To understand the difference between what is safe to share and what is sacred, what you can give freely and what must be guarded as if your entire future depends on it. Because sometimes it does. Calculated opacity is also not a permanent state. It is not a prison. It is a posture, a deliberate, fluid, contextually intelligent posture that shifts according to the situation, the relationship, and the stakes involved. In your intimate relationships, the ones built on genuine trust, genuine history, genuine mutual vulnerability, there is a place for openness. There is a place for honesty. There is a place for sharing the interior of your life with someone who has earned the right to see it. But even there, listen carefully. Even there, not everything needs to be said. Not because you are hiding something from the person you love, but because mystery is not just a social tool. Mystery is alive. Mystery keeps the imagination working. Mystery keeps the curiosity alive. The most enduring relationships, the ones that do not collapse under the weight of familiarity, are the ones where both people somehow manage to remain slightly unknowable to each other, where there is always another layer to discover, another depth to explore, another question that hasn't been fully answered. Total transparency kills intimacy, not slowly, instantly. The moment a person feels they know everything about you, completely, exhaustively, without remainder, the fascination ends, the chase ends, the curiosity ends, and you become furniture. Comfortable, familiar, useful furniture, but furniture nonetheless. Calculated opacity keeps you alive in the imaginations of others, and an imagination that is focused on you is the most powerful form of influence you will ever possess. Now we need to talk about the mind, not your mind, their mind. The minds of every person you interact with, every day, in every room, in every conversation, in every silence. Because this is where calculated opacity does its real work. Here is the mechanism. Here is the psychological engine that makes strategic mystery the most potent social weapon in existence. The human brain is a gap-filling machine. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience. The human brain, your brain, their brain, the brain of every single person alive on this earth, has a deep, hardwired physiological intolerance for incomplete information. When the brain encounters a gap, when it encounters a question without an answer, a story without an ending, a person without a full explanation, it does not simply acknowledge the gap and move on. It cannot. It is constitutionally incapable of doing that. Instead, it obsesses. It fills the gap, compulsively, urgently, with whatever materials are available: imagination, projection, assumption, fear, desire, respect, suspicion, whatever the emotional landscape of that particular mind happens to contain. This is what psychologists call the curiosity gap, and it is the foundation upon which every form of genuine psychological influence is built. Magicians know this, storytellers know this, politicians know this, the greatest seducers in history knew this, and the most powerful people you will ever encounter in your life know this, even if they have never articulated it in these terms. When you leave a gap, when you deliberately, strategically withhold information, you are not creating emptiness, you are creating a gravitational field, and every mind within your orbit will be pulled toward it, unable to resist, unable to look away, unable to stop thinking about you, wondering about you, trying to figure you out. That preoccupation, that involuntary, almost compulsive focus on you, is power. Now contrast this with what happens when you share everything, when you provide the full explanation, the complete context, the entire emotional backstory, every plan laid out in sequence, every doubt confessed, every motive clarified. There is no gap. There is nothing to obsess over, nothing to imagine, nothing to project onto, nothing to be curious about, nothing to fear or respect or wonder about. You are completely explained, completely understood, completely filed away in the minds of others as a known quantity. And known quantities are not fascinating. Known quantities are not powerful. Known quantities are furniture. Think about the people in your life who have fascinated you the most deeply, the ones you couldn't stop thinking about, the ones who made you lean forward, the ones whose names made your pulse shift slightly, whether it was someone you admired, someone you feared, someone you wanted to become, someone you wanted to be close to.
What was it that made them magnetic? Almost certainly, it was not their complete openness. It was something unreachable about them, something you couldn't quite locate, something they had that you couldn't see but could sense. A depth, a reserve, a private world that they moved through quietly, that you caught glimpses of but were never fully invited into. And that glimpse, that partial view, that incomplete picture, your brain built an entire cathedral around it. You filled in everything they didn't tell you with the most powerful projections your imagination could produce. And here is the extraordinary thing about human psychology. The projections your imagination generates about a mysterious person are almost always more impressive than reality. Because your imagination is not constrained by reality. Your imagination is not governed by ordinary facts, ordinary limitations, ordinary human messiness. Your imagination can project greatness, it can project danger, it can project depth beyond measure. It can build a figure of awe and respect and fascination out of a few carefully withheld details. And this is precisely why silence is more powerful than speech, because when you speak, when you explain, when you clarify, when you give the full picture, you are replacing the cathedral your imagination built with a photograph. And photographs, however accurate, are never as magnificent as cathedrals. So here is the practice. You stop giving photographs. You start giving glimpses. Glimpses of where you are going without the map. Glimpses of what you know without the source. Glimpses of what you have built without the blueprint. Glimpses of what you feel without the confession. Enough to create the gap, never enough to close it. Because the open gap is your leverage. The open gap is your presence. The open gap is the reason people think about you when you are not in the room. And when people think about you when you are not in the room, when you live in their minds as an unsolved question, a compelling mystery, a force they cannot fully categorize, you have achieved something that all the talking in the world could never have given you. You have become inevitable. Let's talk about money. Not because this is about money, but because the most useful lens for understanding the value of information is an economic one. Your personal information, your plans, your goals, your fears, your ambitions, your emotional vulnerabilities, your strategic thinking, your next moves, is a currency. It is not a feeling. It is not an expression of your character. It is not a gift you give people to demonstrate your openness or your authenticity or your desire for connection. It is currency. And like all currency, it has value. Real, measurable, consequential value. Value that can be increased or decreased based on how freely you distribute it. Here is the economics of it. When something is scarce, it is valuable. When something is abundant, it is cheap. If you hold a single diamond in your hand and you are in a room where diamonds are rare, that diamond is extraordinary. People will pay for it. People will want it. People will build an entire story around it. But if you pour diamonds onto every table, scatter them across every floor, hand them out at the door as people walk in, what happens to the value of a single diamond? It collapses. Not because the diamonds changed, not because they became less beautiful or less real, but because abundance destroyed their scarcity, and scarcity is what gave them their power. Your words are diamonds. Your information is diamonds. And you have been pouring them on every table, scattering them across every floor, handing them to strangers who didn't even ask, and then wondering why nobody seems particularly impressed by what you say. It is because you have made yourself cheap, not in your character, not in your morality, not in your worth as a human being. Cheap in the currency of information. Cheap in the currency of mystery. Cheap in the currency of psychological weight. The person who speaks rarely but says something extraordinary when they do speak. People remember every word. People repeat those words. People turn them over in their minds for days afterward. The person who speaks constantly, who shares every thought as it forms, who narrates their internal experience in real time like a broadcast, people stop listening after 5 minutes. Not because the content is necessarily empty, but because the abundance has trained their mind to assign it no particular importance. Your silence is a signal. It tells the people around you that what you eventually choose to say has been considered, curated, deemed worthy of your voice. And that curatorial standard, the sense that not everything you think gets the honor of being spoken, elevates every word that does pass your lips. Let silence do the heavy lifting. This phrase is not poetry, it is strategy. When you say less, every sentence you do produce arrives with a weight that it could never carry if it was surrounded by a constant flood of lesser sentences. The most powerful negotiators in the world understand this. When a masterful negotiator makes a statement, after long, deliberate, almost aggressive silence, the person on the other side of the table assigns enormous significance to it, because the silence that preceded it announced its importance. The most powerful leaders understand this. When a leader who is known for extreme economy of speech finally speaks on a matter of significance, every person in the room goes absolutely still, because the rarity of the speech tells them, before a single word is spoken, that this matters. The most dangerous people in any room understand this, the ones who say the least, the ones who watch more than they speak, the ones who, when they do speak, say something that cuts through everything else that has been said and lands like a blade. Those people are not quiet because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because they have learned, truly, deeply learned, that the withholding of information is not a passive act. It is an act of profound, deliberate power. Don't spend it all at once. Every detail you withhold is a deposit in an account that compounds over time. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself, to justify your choices, to preemptively defend your decisions, to share your plans before they have materialized, you are adding to a reserve of psychological weight that other people will feel, even if they cannot name it. They will feel that you have more going on than they can see. They will feel that you are operating at a level they haven't been given access to. They will feel, perhaps for the first time, that they are dealing with someone who cannot be read like a pamphlet, someone who requires serious attention, serious engagement, serious respect. And in that feeling, you have them, completely, bankrupt no longer, rich, staggeringly, irrevocably rich, in the most precious currency of human interaction, the currency of mystery. Now we need to talk about your enemies, and I am using that word precisely, without drama, without exaggeration. In the real world, the world outside the comfortable narratives you were raised on, not everyone who smiles at you is your ally. Not everyone who shares your office, your circle, your industry, your ambitions is rooting for your success. Some of them are watching you, measuring you, cataloging your habits, your fears, your strengths, your weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to position themselves in direct opposition to everything you are building. This is not paranoia. This is the oldest, most fundamental truth of human social competition. Resources are finite. Positions are finite. Status is finite. Recognition is finite. And wherever finite resources exist, competition exists. And wherever competition exists, intelligence gathering exists. The silent, constant, often invisible process of collecting information about the people you are competing against, so that you can anticipate them, outmaneuver them, neutralize them before they even realize the game has begun. And you, with your open hands, your explained plans, your narrated weekend, your enthusiastically shared goals, your transparent insecurities, your publicly announced next moves, you have been making that intelligence gathering extraordinarily easy. You have been your own most efficient informant. You have sat across from competitors, from frenemies, from people with deeply conflicting interests, and you have told them everything. Your timeline, your strategy, the weak points in your plan, the fears that keep you awake at night, the resources you're lacking, the alliances you're trying to build, the outcome you're banking on. And they have taken all of it in, calmly, warmly, nodding at the appropriate moments, maybe offering a word or two of encouragement, and they have walked away with a complete tactical dossier on you, compiled and delivered entirely by you, at no cost to them whatsoever. Think about what it means when your next move is known. When someone knows you are going to pivot left, they have already moved to block the left. When someone knows what you fear most, they know exactly where to apply pressure to make you hesitate at the critical moment. When someone knows the full architecture of your ambitions, they can find the structural weakness, the single point of failure, and quietly, invisibly, work toward it. Predictability is not a neutral trait. Predictability is a fatal vulnerability. The great military strategists of history understood this with a clarity that their contemporaries often did not. Sun Tzu wrote of it. The samurai understood it. Every general who ever won a decisive battle understood that the advantage belonged to the one who was hardest to read, the one whose movements couldn't be anticipated, the one whose strategy remained invisible until the moment of execution, at which point it was already too late for the opponent to respond. Invisible plans are an unstoppable weapon. Read that again. Invisible plans are an unstoppable weapon. Not the most detailed plan, not the most brilliant plan, not the plan built by the smartest person or the most experienced strategist or the most resourceful competitor. The invisible plan. The plan that exists in complete silence. The plan that lives behind closed eyes and a neutral expression. The plan that moves forward in the dark, away from the view of anyone who might benefit from knowing about it. The plan that arrives fully formed, fully executed, irreversibly established, before anyone even realized it had been in motion. That is the plan that wins. And to have that plan, you must learn to love the darkness. Not the darkness of despair, not the darkness of shame or cowardice, the darkness of strategic patience, the darkness of a predator who knows that their power lies in remaining unseen until the exact right moment. You must learn to become comfortable with letting people not know what you are working on, not know what you are planning, not know what moves you are making, what alliances you are building, what resources you are accumulating, what opportunities you are positioning yourself to claim. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let them underestimate you if that serves your purpose, and let them slightly fear you if that serves it better. But never, never give them the map. Because the moment they have the map, your journey becomes their journey too, and they did not earn the right to be on your journey. They did not put in the work. They did not carry the vision. They did not sit in the darkness and doubt and discipline and build what you are building from the ground up. The map is yours. Guard it with everything you have. And understand that the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest. It is not the most expressive. It is not the most transparent or the most openly ambitious or the most forthright about their strategy. The most dangerous person in the room is the one you can't quite figure out. The one who listens more than they speak. The one whose smile doesn't fully answer the question behind your eyes. The one who, when asked a direct question, gives you an answer that is somehow complete and yet reveals nothing. The one who you instinctively feel you should not underestimate, without being able to explain exactly why. Become that person.
Let's bring this out of the realm of philosophy and into the realm of Monday morning, because none of this matters if it lives only in theory. The doctrine of calculated opacity must be practiced. It must be habitual. It must become as natural as breathing, the default state from which you operate, rather than a conscious effort you strain toward only in high-stakes moments. And it starts with something as small as a question. Someone at your job, a colleague, a co-worker, an acquaintance whose interests may or may not align with yours, they look at you on a Friday afternoon and they ask in their most casual, most sociable, most disarmingly friendly voice, "Hey, what are you up to this weekend?" And you can feel the answer rising in your throat before you even consciously form it. The full answer, the complete answer, the honest, friendly, transparent answer that your conditioning has trained you to give in moments exactly like this one. "Oh, I was going to go for a run Saturday morning, but I think I might be a bit too tired, honestly. I've been exhausted this whole week. Then I've got to deal with this home repair situation that's been going on forever. The contractor finally got back to me, but the quote is insane. Sunday I'm having dinner with my family, which is always a whole thing. Oh, and I'm supposed to be looking at this investment opportunity, but I'm not sure if it makes sense yet. I don't even know if I have time for everything. Why? Are you doing anything fun? You know this answer. You have given this answer, or something exactly like it, and you don't even register what just happened. In 30 seconds, you have shared your physical health, your energy levels, your financial situation, your family dynamics, your investment interest, your uncertainty about that investment, your time management struggles, and your social generosity in deflecting the attention back to them. You have given a stranger, or more precisely, a competitive acquaintance, a detailed psychological and circumstantial portrait of your current state. You have told them you are tired. That tells them your resilience is currently compromised. You have told them your finances are strained enough that a contractor quote felt shocking. That tells them your resource base has vulnerabilities. You have told them you're looking at an investment but unsure. That tells them you are financially active but unconfident. You have told them your family relationships are complex. That tells them you have emotional pressure points that can be anticipated. All of this from one casual small talk Friday afternoon question about your weekend. All of this given freely with a smile because your conditioning told you this is how normal, likable, trustworthy people respond. Now watch this instead. The same question, the same person, the same casual Friday afternoon. They ask, hey, what are you up to this weekend? You pause, just briefly, not awkwardly, not rudely, just the pause of someone whose mind is already somewhere else, somewhere important, and who is briefly returning their attention to this present moment as a courtesy. And then you smile, not a wide, eager smile, the quiet kind, the kind that hints at something without naming it. And you say, I have something important to take care of. That is all. And then, smoothly, naturally, without making a point of the transition, you pivot. How about you? Any plans? Now look at what just happened. You gave them nothing, and yet the exchange felt entirely complete. You were not rude. You were not cold. You answered the question, but the answer gave them nothing to catalog, nothing to work with, nothing to store and use against you. And simultaneously, and this is the extraordinary part, you gave them something far more powerful than any of the true details of your weekend could ever have provided. You gave them a question, something important. What is it? Their brain has already started working. They cannot ask you directly. That would be too obvious, too eager, too revealing of their own curiosity. So they carry the question with them. They think about it on the drive home. They wonder, in those quiet moments before sleep, what it might be that you are taking care of. Something important. That suggests weight, significance, purpose. That suggests a life operating at a register they may not have full visibility into. They projected all of that from 2 words. You did nothing except withhold. And in that withholding, you became more interesting, more substantial, more psychologically significant in their mind than you would have been with an hour of honest, detailed conversation. This is calculated opacity in its most practical form. Not lying, not games, not cruelty, strategic communication. You answered the question, you were friendly, you turned the conversation, and you walked away richer in the currency of mystery than you were before. Practice this. In small conversations first. Train the instinct. Feel where the oversharing impulse rises. Feel it like a physical sensation, because over time it does become physical. A kind of conversational itch, a compulsion to fill silence with explanation, and practice choosing not to scratch it. Practice saying less. Practice the pause. Practice the pivot. Practice the quiet smile that answers the surface while guarding the depth. Because once you have this skill, once it becomes instinctive, natural, woven into the fabric of how you move through the world, you will look back at the person who used to explain everything, and you will not recognize them. And more importantly, neither will anyone else.
Now we turn to the master. Because everything explored in this script, the psychology of the curiosity gap, the economics of informational currency, the strategic value of mystery, the devastating cost of predictability, all of it is grounded in a philosophy that was articulated centuries ago by a man who understood power in its most naked, most unsentimental, most ruthlessly accurate form. Niccolò Machiavelli. If you have read him, truly read him, not just heard his name invoked as a synonym for villainy, then you know that beneath the cold surface of his thinking lies something extraordinary. An absolute, unflinching commitment to seeing the world as it actually is, rather than as you wish it to be. A refusal to dress the mechanics of power in the comforting language of morality and sentiment. A willingness to look directly at what works and what doesn't, and to say so plainly, whatever the discomfort. And among all the insights he offered, and they are many, and they are timeless, there is one that cuts to the absolute core of everything discussed tonight. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Read that with the full weight it deserves. Everyone sees what you appear to be, not what you are, what you appear to be. The surface, the projection, the carefully or carelessly constructed image that you present to the world through your words, your silences, your choices, your expressions, your movements, your habits. That is all most people ever see, not your truth, not your depth, not your complexity, not your actual motives, your actual capabilities, your actual architecture. Just the appearance. And here is the devastating implication. If all most people ever see is the appearance, then the appearance is the reality. In the arena of social power, in the world of competition and ambition and status and influence, and all the invisible battles that are fought every single day in offices and dinner parties and negotiations and casual hallway conversations, the appearance is the only thing that matters. Because you will be judged by it, whether you like it or not. You will be categorized, assessed, valued, underestimated, respected, feared, dismissed, all based on the appearance you project. Not based on what you know you are, not based on the richness of your interior life, not based on your real capabilities, your real plans, your real ambitions, based on the surface. So the question is not whether you will be judged by your appearance. You will be. That is settled. The question is whether you will control the appearance. And calculated opacity is precisely the answer to that question. By controlling what you reveal, by being deliberate and strategic and intelligent about the information you allow to reach the surface, you gain direct control over how you are perceived. You author the appearance. You write the surface story. And the surface story is the story that matters in almost every arena you will ever compete in. When people see restraint, they project depth. When people see silence, they project wisdom. When people see confidence that requires no explanation, they project competence. When people see someone who does not need to be understood, they project power. You are not hiding who you are. You are curating who you appear to be. And in a world where everyone sees only the appearance, Machiavelli's world, which is also your world, which has always been the actual world, dressed up in different clothes across different centuries, the one who controls the appearance controls everything. Few experience what you really are, and those few, the ones who genuinely earn their way into the interior, who prove through time and loyalty and genuine aligned interest that they deserve the real version of you, those few matter. But the rest? The rest get the surface. The rest get the carefully calibrated appearance. The rest get exactly as much as you decide in each interaction, at each moment, serves your purpose. This is not inhumanity. This is wisdom. This is the oldest, most field-tested, most repeatedly vindicated wisdom about how power actually works in human society. And it is yours now. Own it.
So here we are, at the end of everything that has been built tonight, the argument laid out, the psychology excavated, the philosophy grounded, the practice demonstrated, and now it is time to ask the real question, not about strategy, not about technique, not about the mechanics of silence or the architecture of mystery. The real question, are you willing to change? Because this is where most people lose it. This is where the insight sits in the room for a moment, alive, vivid, genuinely powerful, and then slowly fades as the old conditioning reasserts itself, as the social warmth you have been trained to associate with openness pulls you back toward the familiar, as the discomfort of being slightly unknowable, slightly alien, slightly unreachable, slightly beyond the comfortable category that other people want to assign you to, becomes too much to hold. Most people retreat. They read something like this. They feel the truth of it at a cellular level. They nod, they feel a brief electrical surge of recognition, and then they go right back to explaining themselves at every opportunity, right back to narrating their weekend to people who were only half listening, right back to sharing their plans with people whose interests run counter to theirs, right back to giving away their diamonds in every conversation, every hour, every day, not because they are weak in the ordinary sense of the word, but because the old self is comfortable, the old self is known, the old self has a script, and the new self, the one that lives in strategic silence, that operates from controlled depth, that wields the doctrine of calculated opacity like the instrument of genuine power it is. The new self is unfamiliar. The new self is dark. Not dark in the sense of malice, dark in the sense of depth. Dark in the sense of being genuinely beyond easy comprehension. Dark in the sense of a night sky that has more in it than you can see, that hints at enormity through its very obscurity. You are choosing right now, in this moment, whether to become that, whether to carry your plans in silence from this day forward, whether to let the curiosity gap work in your favor instead of closing it prematurely with explanation, whether to understand your information as the sacred, finite, enormously valuable currency it is, and to spend it with the precision and intelligence it deserves. Whether to become the kind of person whose presence carries weight not because of what they say, but because of what they choose not to say. Whether to become invisible in your planning and inevitable in your arrival. Think about what that person looks like. Think about how they walk into a room, not with noise, not with announcements, not with the social performance of someone who needs to be noticed, with quiet, with the specific quality of stillness that comes from someone who knows exactly what they are doing and has absolutely no need to explain it. Think about how they answer questions, briefly, confidently, leaving just enough unsaid that the questioner leaves the conversation slightly more curious than they arrived. Think about how they respond to pressure, not with reactive transparency, not with the desperate need to justify and explain and seek understanding, but with a calm that comes from the knowledge that their real strategy is safely out of sight, untouchable, invulnerable. Think about what it would feel like to be that person, to move through your world with plans that nobody can intercept, with ambitions that nobody can undercut, with an emotional interior that is rich and deep and complex but revealed only on your terms, in your timing, to the people who have genuinely earned the right to see it, to carry the diamond instead of scattering it on every table, to let silence do the heavy lifting, to be the question people cannot stop asking rather than the answer they stopped caring about. That person is not a fantasy. That person is the version of you that has always existed beneath the conditioning, beneath the training to share, to explain, to overshare, to make yourself legible to the comfort of others at the expense of your own power. That person is who you become when you stop giving photographs and start giving glimpses, when you stop bankrupting your power with constant expenditure and start building the reserve, when you understand finally, completely, with no more ambiguity, that the most powerful thing you own is not your accomplishments, not your intelligence, not your network, not your resources. It is what you have chosen not to reveal. The thing nobody knows is coming, the plan living in the dark, the move already in motion that no one can block because no one knows it exists. Invisible plans are an unstoppable weapon, and you are now carrying one. Before you leave this moment, understand something. This knowledge is not valuable if it lives only in this video. It is not valuable if it is consumed, appreciated, nodded at, and then filed away alongside every other piece of content that briefly illuminated something true and then dissolved into the noise of daily life. Its value is in the practice. Tomorrow morning, when someone asks you a question, and the oversharing impulse rises, and it will rise because conditioning is not undone in a moment. Pause, choose, give the glimpse, not the photograph. Give the brief, confident answer, not the architectural explanation. Trust the silence, trust the gap, trust that the imagination of others, working on the incomplete picture you have deliberately left them, is already building something more powerful than anything you could have constructed with a full explanation. And if this landed, if something in what has been built tonight resonated with something already inside you, something that recognized its own truth in these words, then stay. Subscribe. Because this is not the last conversation of this kind. There is more, always more, for the one who is no longer willing to be predictable, overlooked, and understood too easily, for the one who is finally ready to live in the power of the unfinished sentence, for the one whose plans from this moment forward belong only to them. Repeat this with the gravity it deserves. My plans remain invisible.